I will start in a minute.
So let me know and I'll start talking.
Can you speak now a bit?
Yes, I can.
Perfect.
1, 2, 3, 4,
Perfect,
5.
perfect singing.
Okay, thank you.
Please, everybody unmute the mics.
Well, hello. My name is Yana Chapaila, and I am a representative of the American Councils of International Education, which is responsible and administers the project called Strengthening Academic Integrity in Ukraine project. This is my colleague, Victoria Taylor, and she'll tell some stuff about her a little bit later. I'll just start talking about the project itself. So Academic Integrity Project started like a year and a half ago. We work with different universities among Ukraine, and we do a lot of different staff connected with the education, with the educational process in Ukraine. Why we are talking about academic writing? Because proper academic writing is the basis of academic integrity. Because students should know how to write in order to avoid plagiarism, in order to avoid academic misconduct and all kind of stuff that you may face while studying in the university. So Victoria Taylor is our English language specialist, and that was brought here, let me say, by the RELO office. RELO office is a regional English language office in the US Embassy. So we are grateful to our colleagues in the US Embassy that we've met Victoria. We've been traveling along Ukraine for last 10 days. We visited Kyiv, Odessa, Lviv, and Kharkiv with the long seminars, 2-day seminars on academic writing. So you'll have a brief review of all of those seminars, and I think you will be able to ask all the questions that you may be interested, and I'm pretty sure that Victoria has all the answers to your questions. So I wish you a good, I wish you to enjoy the seminar and to use the great possibility to ask all the questions. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Yana. Okay. Hi, and thanks for having me here. I've had a great time in Ukraine. Thank you so much to Yana. She's been the best guide ever. She and her colleague Taras. I have seen all of, well, not all of Ukraine, but I've seen a good bit of Ukraine. I am Ukrainian. I'm second generation American. My parents didn't really tell us anything about anything. They wanted to be American. Their parents came over from Ukraine and Poland, and they really wanted to be American, so they didn't tell us anything. But I am tracing my DNA, and I feel it, especially with the horilka and the borscht. But I'm having a great time, and I've met so many wonderful people, and I really appreciate having this opportunity to be here with you guys. What I'm going to do, oh yeah, I've been at Koç University in Istanbul for 12 years. I've been living in Turkey for 13 years. And I've lived in the East and now in the West in Istanbul. 12 years ago when I started at Koç, it was a fairly different university than it is now. It's evolved, particularly in the area of plagiarism. It's evolved a lot, and so it's gotten pretty strong about stopping plagiarism. And we do some things in our academic writing department to cut down a lot on plagiarism. Some of those things I'll talk about today. What I'll do today is just give the broad overview, the starting of it. I'm going to talk a little bit about theory, and then it's not going to be that boring. And I'll talk a little bit about theory, and then I'll talk about some structure and specific stylistic things that I see in student writing that I think is pretty common generally in most student writing. All right, so I guess maybe you've heard this or you've read this saying, how do I know what I think until I see what I say? That's why a lot of people keep journals, personal journals, to get their thoughts out, particularly if they're going through crisis or confusion or trying to make a decision or something. Journals are great for that. Does anybody here, do any of you play a musical instrument? What do you do?
Piano.
Piano. How long have you been playing piano?
Since I was 10.
Are you pretty good at it?
Not really, because I have no opportunity to play right now because I'm studying here. But my piano, like my hometown.
Practice, right?
Yeah.
It comes down to practice. But when you first started playing piano, were you great at it?
No.
No? Practice.
Yeah.
Does anyone play a sport? Anyone do sports?
Yeah.
What do you do?
Gym and tennis. Yep, I do tennis and gym.
And when you first started
Playing
playing
tennis,
Oh, no, wait.
like 12
That's
years
racquetball.
ago. 12
Uh-huh.
years ago.
you just picked up the racket and you could do it.
No, that was a tough process from starting from scratch and trying to hold first trying to hold a racket, and then I was just participating in competition. So
Right.
did
Right.
pretty good.
So it took a coach, it took a practice, it took feedback,
Yeah, blood and respect.
blood, blood, sweat, and tears.
Yeah.
And you play.
Biking, just biking like an amateur, because not professional way, not in a professional way.
Yeah.
Not for 10, 5, 7 hours a day, just sometimes in a week, but alas,
Yeah.
just the last year there was some trainings.
That's
Yeah, but mainly biking.
and now you can go up mountains without fear. You don't think, oh, there's a hill.
No.
You get off your bike and walk up.
No,
No,
we can.
you-
We can walk. We can walk mainly. We usually walk because the bike is not for mounting.
Oh,
actually.
okay.
It's
Oh, it's
for
that's right.
mountain.
Ukraine is flat. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just never here.
Yeah.
But
Uh-huh.
there are different bikes actually. There are
Uh-huh.
professional way, and you can use the special bike for
Mhm.
to go in the mountains. I
Yeah.
thought to have this because it's kind of like it's very heavy actually, and you have to be really maybe not professional, but you have to be prepared for this.
Strong, yeah. Takes time to build up those
Uh-huh.
muscles.
It takes
Yeah, you
time.
have to hold it like that, like
I see.
Beyonce.
It really takes time, and you have to get prepared to. It's not just biking, as I thought years ago. Oh, biking.
Anybody can
What do you do?
that.
Anybody?
Yeah.
Not anybody, but I was like biking, swimming, yes, tennis, yes, but when you took it, you understand. For some hours a day, you understand that it's not like just biking.
It's work.
Yeah, it's work. It's not
Mhm.
like I didn't do like half a head day, but just for some hours. If we really did some trainings, it was for some hours a day. So, but
Right.
okay.
My point is that, oops, I didn't mean to do that one. My point is that writing is like any other skill. It's just like playing a musical instrument or doing sport, creating a drawing or painting. It requires practice, and it requires feedback, and it requires practice, and it requires feedback, and it requires practice over and over again. That's how you get good at something. So writing is no different from that. It's a skill that has to be built. Why is writing valued? Well, it's valued, it's used within schools and organizations to regulate activity. Everything's written, rules, the capacity, the password, what to do, where to go, close this door, put this away, keep pushing, this door will open in 15 seconds. I mean, all of this, these things are written instructions, mission statements, objectives, laws, contracts, teacher directions. Everything's written. Writing marks the kind of discourse that is highly valued in society. Students you transition from home, which was an oral environment, everything was spoken. Then you started learning your letters and you learned how to write your name, and then you went to school and you went from an oral area to one where writing is preeminent. It's used by schools and many businesses to assess progress, as you know. It's the principal mode and medium used in examination systems and sometimes in business interviews. My daughter interviewed with Remax, which is not in Ukraine, but it's global. It's a global real estate company. She was interviewing not as a real estate person to sell real estate, but in consulting and other things. And she had to go through a process where she had to give a PowerPoint presentation. She had to write. They had to make sure that she had good communication skills, writing and speaking, and she was clear-headed before she could start working for them. So she needed to be a good writer. Writing is a principal mode in many activities, in many organizations. It's essential for professional and academic success. It promotes, as you know from being students, it promotes and reinforces higher level thinking and learning. When you're studying, you often are writing your notes or rewriting your notes. Writing creates a good impression. and it can earn respect. You know that it structures and clarifies your ideas. It improves the effectiveness of both written and oral speech. It can be your presence in the online community. If you have a blog, maybe you're responsible for website, or maybe like Sasha, you're responsible for IT. Maybe you have to keep up the web pages. It's critical to becoming a good reader. It's an essential job skill. And it's the primary basis upon which one's work, learning, intellect will be judged in college, in the workplace, in the community. All writing begins with two elements, purpose and audience. For example, if you are new to Kiev, maybe you come from a smaller town somewhere and now you're here at the university, or you're living here. You've been here, say, a month. You send emails home. You send an email to your best friend back home, and you send an email to your parents or your grandparents about what you're doing, how your day's going, who you're hanging out with. Is that going to be the same email? The one to your best friend and the one to your parents or grandparents? Why not? Purpose is the same. You want to tell about what you're doing.
Content will be different.
Exactly.
Examples will be different.
Exactly. Language will be different. Yeah, because your audience will be different. Your purpose may be the same, but your audience is different. So you structure your content, your language, sentence structure, everything toward that audience. And there are many, many different kinds of purposes. To convince an audience, to offer information, to tell a story, initiate action, to instruct, provide instruction. We have many, many purposes in writing. When we're writing for a particular audience, we have to consider how readers are going to access that information. And so we organize information that conveys that information clearly to our audience. We choose words carefully to create sentences appropriate for the audience and the purpose, like the emails. These are just some purposes, some of the things that we write. And we're not going to write a business report or a greeting card or a personal letter the same way we would like a speech or a textbook chapter. All of these purposes require different structure of content, word selection, sentence phrasing. Academic writing, any writing, is a recursive process. I can do this with this. It's a recursive process. We begin by pre-writing. Maybe we do a lot of free writing before we start writing. We just need to get the words out. Often I'll give some free writing time for my students, maybe 10 minutes at the beginning of classes. Sometimes I give them focused free writing tasks. Sometimes I just say write on what we did yesterday, on the article that we discussed yesterday. So what happens is students will sit there for a while, and then I just sit there like this with, excuse me, their pencil on their paper. I can't think of anything to write. What am I supposed to write? That's exactly what you're supposed to write. I can't think of anything to write. Why am I doing this? I hate this. Why does she make us do this? I don't know what to write. What does she want me to say? And then after a while, the words come. It primes the pump. It gets the words flowing. It's also a great strategy for writer's block. If you're ever blocked when you're writing, just start writing. I'm blocked. I don't know what to do. What am I supposed to say? I got to start this paper. It's too late. I'm going to miss my deadline. And just the words will come. Free writing is a great way to get the words going. Then at some point you start doing your drafting. You start drafting your assignment. Then you'll revise and you'll draft again and you'll revise, and then you'll give your paper to somebody to look over and give you some feedback. Then you'll go back and you'll revise again, and then you'll get some more feedback. It's a recursive process. It keeps going on until finally you get into the editing, correcting all the spelling and the punctuation, and then submitting your paper. If I were to go around the room and ask everybody what their process is for writing, we'd get some really interesting answers. For example, when you have to write something, do you prefer writing from 11 to 2 a.m.? Do you get up at 5 and write till 7 or 8? Do you just write on Sunday mornings or Saturday mornings? Do you have a time that you prefer writing? Do you block out days? Okay, I'm going to write on Tuesday. That's going to be my day for writing. Do you need a clean surface to start your writing? Does everything have to be tidy and put away? Or some people prefer to just get their laptop, sit on their bed and write. I had a grad student who said he prefers writing in the graduate student office with people coming in and out and talking. Some people, I prefer listening to music in the background. Do you? What kind of music? Classical, jazz, hip hop, abstract hip hop, something in the background. Coffee, tea, chocolate, something, cigarettes, something. Yeah, you see, everybody has a process. Also, you have to work with the procrastination that comes with meeting a deadline. You know what I'm talking about. We are all procrastinators. But that works for you. Procrastination is your friend. You're okay. I'll tell you why. I'm sorry?
There are pluses in anything, I understand. And in procrastination.
Okay, so you know you've got a deadline. You've got a deadline coming up, and you know you have to start writing your paper because it's going to take you a while. You're going to write it, and you're going to revise it, you'll get feedback and everything. So you create maybe a false deadline. Okay, by Saturday I'm going to have time. I'm going to start writing on Saturday. And so Saturday starts coming. And what your assignment is cooking in your head. It's in your subconscious. You may not know it consciously, but it's back there. Okay, so Saturday is looming, and you think, oh, God, what am I going to do? Oh, I got to get started on this, but I don't know what I'm doing. So then Saturday comes, and you start going through your process. You start going through your procrastination process. First, maybe you have to clean all the dishes in the house. You got to wash all the dishes. And then maybe you got to vacuum. And the rhythmic movement starts thinking, and some people like to walk. They have to take a walk. Some people like to shoot hoops. They have to do some sort of physical activity. You got to walk your dog, something. But you're working with that procrastination because you have to sit down and start writing soon. And so you start going through all of your routine and all of your processes that you have to do before you start writing, and then you finally sit down to write. And by then the procrastination has created such a buildup of adrenaline that boom, you sit down, you start writing. And then once you get that first paragraph out, even if it's in the middle of the paper, then you feel better about yourself. And you know, okay, I can do this. I can meet my deadline. Work with procrastination. It's your friend. It creates the adrenaline that you need. And don't fear it. Don't fear procrastination. Okay, I just talked about all of that. All right, if you're a grad student, any grad students in here? No? Yeah? Post-grad, here's your life. Right? This is it. Eat, sleep, revise. Eat, sleep, revise. No life. Okay. And as I said, there's no one correct way to move from gathering information to writing early drafts to producing final documents. There's not a single way that you start writing. You just work with your system, with your process. The writing process is sensitive to everything that we do. Let's get into some theory. Yeah? All right. The good news is, the guiding elements in writing is purpose and audience. And the good news is academic writing, and I'm talking about Western writing, English writing. Academic writing is basic. Subject, verb, object. The end. Academic writing is boring writing. That's the writing we have to do. The other good news is that in English, in academic writing, you only use 3 verb tenses, really. Simple present, simple past, and present perfect. Sometimes future, like at the end, future work. The average academic sentence is about 28 words. Less is more. Of course, it also depends on your discipline. Your introduction to other people in your field is through your writing. They don't know who you are until you publish a paper, until you present at a conference. So your writing, it hinges on how good of impression you give to everybody else in your field. When you communicate well, you receive credit for your work. Okay, this is weird. I didn't do that. You receive credit for your work. When you do not communicate well or are too slow to communicate, the credit goes to someone else. On a larger level, now this was targeted towards science and engineering people, but on a larger level, your writing and the writing of other, say, scientists or researchers can influence public policy. For example, the one that always comes to mind first is Noam Chomsky. When I was in grad school, we read Noam Chomsky. He was a linguist, and he wrote articles that we read for our graduate courses. Now he influences public policy. He's Mr. Political. He's always writing about political things. And there are other examples, but that's the first one I could think of. Anybody have an example of that? Somebody who's a professor, but they're influencing public policy. Okay. As academics, we communicate in many different situations. And these are, we know these, reports, articles, proposals, conferences, lectures, meetings, all of that academic stuff that we have to do. But then we also have to adjust our audience techniques for expert technical audience or general technical audience, and then non-technical audiences. We have to tell people, a broad range of people, what it is we do. Like, Stephen Hawking. He can reach all of us. He can talk to all of us. He adjusts his information about physics and the universe and all that so that we understand it. It's a good example. Okay, that was an activity that we did. Okay, now let's talk about contrastive rhetoric. Are you familiar with this term, contrastive rhetoric? Why writing in English is different, meaning why non-native English speakers have some problems writing in English. We come from different rhetorical traditions, and rhetoric is how we use language. It's using language effectively, regardless of the language you speak. It's how we use it. It's how we get our message across. It's how we get people to do things, how to persuade people. Back in 1966, there was this guy, Robert Kaplan, and he was going around the world teaching English in different countries. And he realized that when he would ask, for example, Chinese students to write an essay in English, they would give him these essays in English, but they would be written in the Chinese style, the Chinese writing style. He'd be in Russia, and he realized, gee, these guys are writing essays in English, but it's in the Russian language style, Russian writing style, and so on. So he realized that paragraph orientation is related to language background, and that rhetoric is language and culture specific. Of course, there are other factors like socialization and education. You guys have been socialized and educated. If you're non-native English speakers, you have been socialized and educated in English. You understand what I'm saying. Maybe if I make jokes or references, you can understand that. But still, your rhetoric is language and culture specific. There are cultural differences in organizing and presenting information. There are different expectations of readers and writers. For example, those of you who are Ukrainian or Russian, if you're reading a piece in your native language written by a native Ukrainian or Russian writer, whose responsibility is it to understand the main message? Is it up to the writer or up to the reader? Reader. It's up to the reader. You have to make sense of what they're writing. Yeah. It's your responsibility. When you're writing for an academic audience, whose responsibility is it? Yeah, it's the writer's responsibility. So there are different expectations there. And it boils down to cultural backgrounds. What came first, culture or language? That's Sapir-Whorf hypothesis. All right, there's collective versus individualistic cultures. You've heard of that. You guys, Ukrainians, you're from a collectivistic culture. I'm from an individualistic culture. That makes a difference coming down into the writing style, because that's our cultural rhetoric. There's this indirectness and versus directness. We are very direct. Western, native English speakers are very direct. You guys are less direct. You're more indirect. Maybe your language is more polite. In Turkish, certainly their language is more polite, they're more indirect, they use a lot of modals, and it comes through when they're writing in English. I've had students tell me, I feel rude when I write in English. I feel arrogant when I write in English. Yeah. And I understand. I said, well, for the time you're writing in English, you may feel some discomfort, but know that it's just that you have to write in English and you have to be very, very, very direct. Message up front, message first. In English, there's a simplicity of expression. Less is more. Less is more. Short, to the point, get to the point, and move on. Whereas in Ukrainian, and certainly in Turkish, there's a feeling that a long sentence is an elegant, sophisticated sentence, an educated sentence, right? Same in Ukrainian. A long sentence is an elevated, sophisticated sentence. It's the opposite in English, and that creates problems writing in English because you have to get rid of all of that embellishment and get straight to the point. And then reader responsibility. It's up to writers to make sure that the readers understand everything. Now, when Kaplan published this article in 1966, okay, let me back up a minute. Problems in writing in a language different from native language for an English speaker may be that the writer, a non-native English speaker writer, the language appears to be out of focus or lack cohesion. It doesn't work right. There's something wrong. Well, it's different traditions in rhetoric. And you know, our tradition is from the Greek philosophers, Socrates, ethos, pathos, logos, very defined, very structured presentation. So when we read English written from a non-native English speaker, we have problems. Sometimes we don't get it. We don't understand it. Okay, so Kaplan put these doodles in his article. Have you seen these before? And this is from 1966, so you know it's not exactly politically correct. All right, so you see English. You know English. Just get to the point. Get it done. And here's Turkish. Okay, and Korean. Yeah. Very indirect. They can have different thesis statements and could appear anywhere, but it takes them a while to get to the point. I've had some students. Sometimes I'll get a paper from a student, like an undergraduate student, and I'll be reading and going, "Oh, what's happening here? So what? Where are we going with this?" And then finally, in the conclusion, everything happens in the conclusion, at the very end. And I say, "Look, this is your introduction. Move it up here and start over. Put this here, and now write your paper." Oh, okay. Yeah, that's what our expectation is in English because we start with the point and we finish with the point. We get right to it. Okay, and here is Russian and Ukrainian, right? Digressions, embellishments, getting off point a little bit, then finally getting to the point. All right, so in a chart, differences between English and Russian. This is not a prescription for fixing writing by non-native English speakers. However, it is a good framework to talk about writing with students. And I do this with all of my students in Turkey. I did this English-Turkish system. And I show the differences between, okay, in English we have this expectation, this is how we are writing, and in Turkish or Russian, this is the expectation and this is the differences between these areas. Notice that I'm using Russian. I'm not using Ukrainian. And here's a research opportunity for those of you who are interested. There, I could not find any information on contrastive rhetoric, Ukrainian and English. So there's a publishing opportunity if you're so inclined to write some articles showing differences in writing, doing some case studies.
They will be pretty same with Russian. They will be pretty same with Russian.
Okay, so prove it.
Okay.
Show. Yeah. We need to cite you. Okay. All right, so in English, you know, there's a fixed word order, and the meaning is conveyed. We know we have subject, verb, object, and then if we want to add anything, we have our adjectives, we have adverbs, we have prepositional phrases, whereas in Russian, you change the inflection, you add prefixes and suffixes. And that's how you have your word order. Your word order is more fluid, but you put the most important word first. Now this is all from research. I'm not familiar with the language, as like I am with Turkish, so it's easier for me to speak about it in Turkish than with, but you can tell me if this is right or wrong and what I need to fix. Okay, and so in English, the verbs, we have progressive and perfect tenses. We don't need inflection, affixation, or suffixation. However, in Russian, the verbs, the actions are either completed or not completed. And you append affixes to the verb stem. You don't have auxiliary verbs, or maybe you just have a few.
Yeah.
You do? Well, then.
To be works as auxiliary in Russian and Ukrainian.
To be?
Yeah.
Well, then when students translate, they might write, how do that, how you do that. I know have it. Those are some of the examples that I got from the research. Students who are learning the language. Okay, and then English, linear, focused, straight. In Russian, there's a tolerance for digression. You know, just like in that doodle, there's a lot of digression. In English, there are defined formats. That's another good thing about academic writing in English. It's very structured. You know exactly what to put in each section. The introduction, the literature review, the methods, the results. It's pretty structured. You know how what you're supposed to put in each part. All you have to do is write it. However, in Russian, there's a less strictly formulated text format. English, short sentences to the point, whereas Russian, elaborate, maybe embellishments. And that is, you know, when students are writing and they have a hard time with this part because they're not used to writing short and to the point. So they have to learn how to not use so many words and where to cut the words. More about that later. English, direct, active. Sentences begin with a subject, whereas in Russian, more passives, indirect, and sentences often begin with the object. This is a tough one. Thesis statement or main message in the introduction for Russian, Ukrainian, Turkish students, certainly it's hard to write a thesis statement and to put it up front and to have a really defined thesis statement or purpose, bringing the main message in the introduction. We talked about writer-reader responsibility, and in English we have a variety of reader engagement techniques. You know, we use questions sometimes, meta-language, links to prior research. We have literature reviews, whereas in Russian, I'm going to tell you everything I know. Instead of, let me show you how we did this. Let me take you into my thought processes and explain this situation that's going on with migration in Ukraine or something. You know, and then you're setting up for your experiment or your case study. And then in English we use first person. In academic writing and journal articles, we, mostly, and in Russian, still passive, don't use first person. Sorry?
Others. Others can see it.
Others. One can. Others can. Yeah.
Others can see it.
Yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah. Not me. Others, somebody.
Not me, but others.
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah.
Excuse me.
Yes.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, sure. Can you please elaborate a little bit more about this element, use of the first person in English?
Mm-hmm.
Because, well, I'm an author of several peer-reviewed articles, and I always had this problem
What's the problem?
to actually use the first person.
To use the first person yourself. Well, most citations, documentation manuals, most citation styles now encourage use of active and first person. Most science and engineering articles are written by a gang. You know, there's a team. So they use we, and that's normal, it's natural. But even in, for example, psychology. Now, APA was real slow to come around to the active first person because they were trying to legitimate psychology as a legitimate science. So beginning of the 20th century, they were always writing in the passive. Around the 1980s, though, APA came out and said, okay, look, we're legitimate. You guys recognize us as a legitimate science, so now use active and write in first person. However, even if you single author an article for APA, they want you to use we.
Me and my cat. Me and
Oh yeah. So, okay. So what Yana does,
My cat and me.
Yana will just include, because it's going to be weird for her to write a single authored paper and write we, she adds her cat. Second
So
author.
it's possible to use me and my cat. It's not a mistake now.
Well, I don't know. I don't know. Tell us, Yana. Yeah.
Can you explain the
I understood what she asked you.
Uh-huh.
Because I didn't get the answer quite clear, because actually my experience was, even with American publishing houses, is that whenever I mentioned, so for example, I don't know, like in the article I researched or I analyzed, every time it came with certain corrections, saying, well, you shouldn't have said so, you should have mentioned, like, for example, the article analyzes. So not me, but the article.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
in the article it is analyzed, stuff like that. So I'm really surprised that this is the first person. Yeah.
Okay. I have one question. What's your field?
Political science.
Aha. Okay. So what documentation style do you use? What citation style do you use?
I don't know, Harvard referencing, maybe.
Well, when you send your article to a journal for publication, they have advice for authors, submission instructions, and they'll tell you what they follow. I mean, if they follow, I don't know about Harvard style, like Chicago and all those, they will recommend that you use first person. Not first, but they'll recommend that you use active, and active means maybe it is the report that's analyzing. Maybe they're still, maybe the reviewers who read your article are kind of stuck and they're, they don't want you to use we or I. That's okay. If the report analyzes, or the paper, the purpose of this paper is to blah, 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 and the paper will do these things, okay, it's still active. And that's the point, it's still active. But it depends on the discipline, you can use I or we. Yes. You going to tell your cat joke?
Oh, well, the cat joke, yeah, the cat joke is kind of follows the. No.
Cat and I.
Yeah, my cat and me, cat and I. Yeah.
Like me and my cat.
No, that was about the author who should write, like the paper. The paper came back to the author, and it was said that please add somebody. Please change I into we. So the author decided to sign it like I don't know, Yana Chapailo and my cat Miki or something like that, because he didn't want to add anyone else. He didn't want to change I into me, because it was like I who wrote the stuff. So he just added the cat. It's like the joke between PhD students, something.
Yeah.
But still, why do they want to write we?
Because
The personalized, she's allowed.
and it will depend too. It depends on the discipline, and also it depends on if you're a star in your field. Sometimes journal editors will ask you, we have a special issue coming up in spring, it's about blah, 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 your field, would you please write something for it? And so you can, you can write I, you get away with a lot of stuff. Yeah. You have to know the field. All right, so one day I will find the right words and they will be simple. Jack Kerouac. Yeah, good luck. All right, now we'll talk a little bit about style. This is just an overview, and some of the problems I see with students, not problems, but weaknesses, things that just can be sharpened, tweaked to make better. Starting with verbs. Verbs. It's what we do. And when we use dynamic, active verbs, the reader appreciates it. We can read your paper better. We can flow through your paper when you're writing with an active voice with a good dynamic verb. At Coach University, there is a default verb, and maybe you have your own default verbs. What's the verb that you always fall back on? Well, at Coach, it's mention. Everything is mention, and mention means nothing. It has no information at all. There's so many words. And here's where I would like to point out the thesaurus. Do you use a thesaurus? Thesaurus, it's, okay, I always have it up on my computer. Thesaurus.com, use it, go there. Use some dynamic verbs and not just the same one. THESAURUS, thesaurus.com. Greek word meaning treasury. It's a treasury of synonyms. It's your friend. That and procrastination. Verbs provide the momentum for your writing. The purpose of academic writing is to convey meaning clearly and concisely. And if your writing is convoluted, if you've got too many passives and prepositional phrases and mention, it's not good writing. For example, this is how my students will write, like especially, well, this is how the grads write too. with double passives. They'll use a lot of double passives. The universities were begun to be surrounded by police. How many verbs do you need in that sentence? The universities were begun to be surrounded. And that's thinking in Turkish, writing in English, or maybe thinking in Ukrainian and writing in English. Happens. It is aimed to be shown. It is aimed to be shown how the crisis began. With the solution, we achieve to increase. Okay, double passives, problem. How would you write the first sentence? The universities were begun to be surrounded. What would you? The universities, the police surrounded the universities, or the universities were surrounded by police. I mean, if you want to put it in passive. What about the second one? We'll show. Okay, all right.
The aim was to show
How crisis began. Okay, and with the solution, we achieved to increase. Do you need we achieved? If you achieved it, if you increased it, you've achieved it. The universities were surrounded, or police surrounded the universities. The purpose of this paper is to show. Here we go. Or with the solution, we increase the capacity. Simple, to the point, much easier to read. We don't have to reread it. All right, another problem is verb plus preposition. You remember phrasal verbs. Phrasal verbs are our friends. We use them all the time. We need them. They're the backbone of our speech. What is this? What happened when we put this? Where's Sasha? What happened when we put this on this screen? That's not the way the sentence is supposed to be. We lost the sentence. All right. We lost the sentence. Look at this. This is weird. All right. Anyway, the original sentence, researchers, is supposed to be researchers looked at the way strain builds up around a fault. Looks at, builds up. Phrasal verbs. Nothing wrong with that sentence. It's a correct sentence. Researchers looked at the way strain builds up. But isn't this a better sentence? Researchers observed the way a strain accumulates around a fault. Use active dynamic verbs and it sharpens the sentence. It's just a better sentence. George Orwell said, never use two words when one will do. Never use two words when one will do. All right, here's a little, okay, well this one came out okay. Sort of, except for this. All right, so we have some phrasal verbs in each sentence, and we have verbs that we can choose to sharpen the sentence. For example, expert systems can help out the user. Instead of help out, what word would you use? Assist. Yeah. This program was set up to improve. Established. Mm-hmm. Research expenditures have gone up. Have increased, yeah. Mm-hmm. The use of OCR should cut down the number of problems. Reduce. Okay, so there's nothing wrong with these sentences. They're all correct, but they're better when you just use one sharp dynamic verb because it gives more information. It's less informal. Confusing pronoun areas are another problem with student writing, starting with omission of summary words. As you know, an antecedent, this is just kind of boring grammar theory. An antecedent is a noun which a pronoun substitute for or refers to. We can have ambiguous or vague pronoun references in writing, pronouns with multiple possible antecedents, or pronoun without a specific antecedent, meaning you're writing a sentence or you're reading a sentence and the next sentence starts with pronoun, maybe this or that, and you're not sure what the this or the that refers to because the sentence before that had maybe 3 or 4 nouns and you're not sure what they're referring to. So you have to reread everything and you get confused. Okay, the rule is that a pronoun must refer to a single noun. The unattended this or the unattended that, this and that. Okay, consider this sentence. The student said they wanted more tests. This surprised the instructor. Let's say it's a request. The request surprise. With just this surprise the instructor, we're not sure. I mean, we can guess that it's the request. Or maybe the request for more tests surprised the instructor. Okay, the students said they wanted more tests. This what surprised the instructor? What if they said, we want more tests? Well, oh no, that's this one, this demand. Yeah, demand surprised the instructor. Or maybe it was just the statement that surprised the instructor, but certainly the demand. We want more tests. What if they said, we want more tests or we're walking out of here? Well, this ultimatum surprised the instructor. And notice how the summary word changes the sentence. It changes the feeling, the meaning, or clarifies the meaning of the sentence. You need a summary word after this or that. What if the students walked into class and said, oh, I hope she gives us more tests. I need to raise my grade point average. Oh, I hope we have a test today. This hope surprised the instructor. This miracle surprised the instructor. Okay, so summary words are essential. Okay. Amy had an internship at Dell last summer. This will become her career. Huh? What does this refer to? That she's going to be an intern her whole life? She's going to have an internship her whole life. Okay, chance. Chance would help a lot. Or Amy had an internship at Dell last summer. This work will become her career. Ah, okay, now it's clarified. Now we understand. Something very simple, just a word, a noun placed there. According to a recent survey, 26% of all American adults, down from 38% 30 years ago, now smoke. This can be partly attributed to the mounting evidence linking smoking and fatal diseases such as cancer. This what? We're not sure. Does decline work? Sure. Does drop work? This drop. You don't think so? It's not a drop?
It's more informal.
Okay, okay. All right, okay. Yeah, all right.
Reduction, decrease.
Yeah, those.
And improvement. No, a little bit.
Uh-huh.
Each of those words can be used.
Each one can be used. As you said, drop may be a little informal, or maybe it's not enough of a drop.
Absolutely.
Yeah. You didn't like improvement? You don't like improvement. Okay. Well, why would you use improvement here?
Because it's an improvement.
Well, doesn't this depend on your audience? Here's an example of where this would depend on your audience. If you're talking to an audience of cigarette manufacturers, improvement's not going to work. However, if you are addressing public health officials, people in public health, improvement would work. All right, early in September each year, the population of Ann Arbor, Michigan suddenly increases by about 20,000 as students arrive for the new academic year. This changes the character of the town in a number of ways. This what? This influx, does that work? This influx? Yeah. This increase? You don't like increase? Increase works. What about rise? This rise changes the character. Or jump. Jump clarifies the sentence in a kind of a different way. And what about invasion? Invasion works, doesn't it? Sure, depending on your audience and your purpose. I use the example, instead of Ann Arbor, Michigan, I use Sarıyer, Istanbul. Small fishing, it used to be a little fishing village that now that Koç University has built university in the forest above Sarıyer. This is what happens. So if you're a guy, you know, you've been living in Sarıyer all your life and it was a fishing village and you appreciate it being small and quiet, and now Koç has this university and all these students come and there's cars and traffic and people, then yeah, invasion would probably be your choice. So all of these work. It depends on purpose and audience. And notice how the summary word, oops, sorry, the summary word, I meant to hit this one. The summary word changes the feeling of the sentence, clarifies the sentence in a different way. And notice this reference, John Swales, Christine Feek, Academic Writing for Graduate Students, 2nd edition. This is the text that I draw most from. It's a very popular text among academic writing courses. And they're widely known. John Swales, Christine Feek, if you ever see anything written by them, use it. This book can be used with undergraduates. There are a lot of activities, and they have a good language summary section where students can just take the phrases and the language that they show for different purposes, just put it in your paper. That's how we academics use language, just use these phrases and words. Also, it's in its 3rd edition now. They also have an edition just for non-native speakers of English. And I have those pictures at the end of this show. John Swales also did some research. This was just kind of incidental trivia. He did some research at some point where he was looking at the summary words different disciplines used, dentistry, electrical engineering, and so on, after this and that. Just FYI. But they use summary words. Okay, it. Let's talk about it and the passive. What is it? It is found that when there is hard lower and upper bounds for constraints, there might not exist assignments that satisfy standard fairness properties. Do you understand that sentence? What is the it that was found? It is found that. What's it? How does the writer know that it is found? And how does the reader know what it refers to? It is found. What's the it that's found? Why would you even write that? Just get rid of that phrase, it is found that. Just write, when there's hard lower and upper bounds for constraints, there might not exist assignments, and this needs to be revised. There might not exist assignments that satisfy standard fairness properties. This phrase is meaningless. It doesn't add anything. It gives no information. It's useless. And it adds to your word count. And if you're publishing in Western Journal, you're going to have a word count. And this will just bloat your word count. Phrases like that. They mean nothing. How about these others? It is known that 3D general relativity, blah, blah, blah. It can be pointed out. Well, point it out. It can be said. Somebody can say it, not me, but it can be said. Or it can be argued, not me, somebody else can argue this. It's so indirect, and they're useless phrases because they don't give any information. And if something can be said, say it. If something can be argued, structure the argument. Take a position, write it. And if you're academics and you're publishing, you know that academics love an argument. And once you have present a position and you have that published, somebody else is going to jump on your position and write an article trying to refute your position, which is good news for you because you get a citation. And if you are an academic professional, you know that you need those citations for promotion and tenure. So yeah, make an argument. Start something and let other people cite you. And then watch your citations roll. Anyway, these are useless because they don't give any information. We don't know what the it is. It is a dummy subject. It obscures the real subject. It encourages the passive. It makes the sentence longer. It delays the point. And it hides responsibility. Mistakes were made. It has been said, mistakes were made. It is found that when there are hard lower and upper bounds, that sentence, if we take that sentence and revise it, okay, first we have 24 words. It is found that when there is hard upper and lower bounds for constraints, blah, blah, blah. Revised, from 24 words, we get 19 words. So we cut down on the word use considerably. When there are hard lower and upper bounds for constraints, assignments that satisfy standard fairness properties may not exist. That's a much better sentence. I still don't know what it means, but somebody knows. Some mechanical engineering student knows what that means. All right, so in other words, it is an ambiguous pronoun. Sleeping 8 hours a night is vital to the health of students, yet research clearly shows they simply don't do it. What does it refer to? What's the antecedent of it? Well, we can guess. It's got something to do with the sleep. Although sleeping 8 hours a night is vital to the health of students, research clearly shows they simply don't sleep that much. All right. When Samuel dropped the goblet onto the glass table, it broke. What broke? His It's ambiguous. Maybe Samuel. It broke. But wait a minute, we have a pronoun for Samuel, and it's not it. The goblet broke when Samuel dropped it on the table. Or maybe the glass broke when Samuel dropped the goblet on the table. We don't know. All right. Now, the next part of this is research inquiry, which I don't have any activities for, and I'll just zip through. It's getting down to asking questions in your research and creating a strong thesis statement, avoiding the so what questions, asking what and how questions are best. And I don't have it on that one. Okay, I thought I had the pictures of the books I referred to, but I have it on a different one. It's on the what was the second one I did? Yana. What was the second one I did with that group? I've been doing. I just keep doing these. Any questions while we're looking for that? Yes.
Some words, if it's possible, about meta language.
Like referring to other words in the sentence, or referring to, maybe referring to a noun or to a verb. How we refer to language, even when we're writing language, we're referring to language, perhaps. That's very hypothetical, isn't it? But it's how we refer to language when we're talking about language. Like we'll refer to that passage, that in this book, things like that. Other questions?
About the questions in
Can you show me which
like literature review. Our research is based on what other people have done, and we have to show that we've done our homework, we know what happened before. Our research came from other things. Unless you're Tesla. Yeah. Yeah, I couldn't remember which one did he... Okay, it wasn't that one. I know what it was. It was do this one, undergraduate and graduate. Yeah. That was the boring one with the syllabus and everything. Okay, this is just, I was giving some information about the types of courses we teach at Coach for undergraduates and grads. But at the end, at the very end, here are the books. And I also, at the last place where we had an audience, I referred to economical writing. It's kind of like the Strunk and White, that thin Strunk and White book about writing. That thin Strunk and White manual about writing. Economical writing is like that. Every page just gives some tips about writing clearly. And then this is the one for non-native English speakers. And this is in its third edition now. I'm still on the second edition. These are excellent, excellent, excellent books. You can use these with undergrads, with grads. You can use activities for yourself.
Where can you find them?
You can find them on Amazon for sure, maybe in your own library, but I know that there are used copies because everybody I know, and especially people who teach graduates abroad, non-native English speakers, they use Swales and Feek.
You can try to find some resources in the American Library in Cave Mohila Academy. There is a huge library which is supported by the U.S. government. It's a Window in America Center by named after Kutaste. So it's American Library.
That's the Victor Kutaste.
Yes, so you can go there and find, maybe they have literature and resources on academic integrity. I'm not sure that they have these books, but there's a lot of information there.
Is there a way that these can be ordered, or that if somebody wants, for example, these two, that they can order them? Can you submit orders?
Order
the
them.
library?
What do you mean?
Like to the library, can you just ask the library if they could just order a copy next time they do their ordering?
Well, I think that I think that we can ask the librarians if they collect some orders and maybe then buy some additional resources. That
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if you find these books are good, and you can get used copies, certainly. Okay then. Any other questions?
No.
No. Yes.
I say a few words about adjectives in academic writing.
Yeah. Don't use highly. That's really, they use it as an adjective. Yeah, you can't measure highly or very.
Okay.
Don't use those unless you can measure them, unless you can show some data. Because students like to overuse those. But adjectives are okay. You know. Depends. It depends. What's your field?
History.
Oh, okay. Well, then you would use some adjectives. Probably. Yes. Well, then, any other questions? All right. Well, thank you
Well,
very much. Yeah.
if you don't have any questions, I have some information I'd like to show you.
Okay.
And
This one with the
so,
slides.
as I told you previously, I work with Strengthening Academic Integrity in Ukraine project, and this is the project website page. We have resources over here. Yep. And here we have a lot of information translated into Ukrainian and is originally is in English. We also have like 10 principles of academic integrity, information about plagiarism, a letter to my students. It's another really famous article that was written by Bill Taylor. It's about the expectations professors have to their students and also expectations students may have toward their professors. So it's really interesting literature you may find useful. We also developed an academic writing course in Ukrainian, not in English, but in Ukrainian. We have a syllabus over there as well. So you, if you're a professor, if you represent some university, you may read this information over there. We also broadcast all the events that we hold on our web page and on Facebook. And so all the information that was presented by Victoria will be there as well. And you can read a lot of stuff about the project, about the universities we work with, about our news, what we do, about the press, resources. Also, you can find contact over there. We are really grateful to the America House who hosted us. I feel like I need to say something more because this is the last time we are working in Ukraine with Ukrainian public. Yes, so maybe you can come here one more time. And yeah, because we were having a huge, really busy time in Ukraine. We've met more than 120 professors and PhD students all around Ukraine, visited a lot of people. And I think that if Victoria has any other information to share with you guys, you can just visit our website page and you can find all. I'm pretty sure we can post the presentation, right? You can, if you'd like, we can post the presentation over there. Yeah. So thank you very much. Thank you guys for being here. Thank you guys for listening us. If there were any, I hope there were some people watching us. And yeah, thank you.
I heart Ukraine. I've had a great trip around Ukraine. I've met so many wonderful people. And I do want to point out one other thing, that I've been at Coach 12 years, and when I first started there, we didn't have a lot of the programs that we have now. And I see a lot of things that are embryonic in Ukraine, in universities, the seed is there and it's just starting to grow in terms of academic integrity and publishing and academic writing courses and the interest, and how writing can be incorporated in every syllabus. Writing techniques can be incorporated into every syllabus regardless of what you're learning or you're teaching. So it just starts like that. It just starts, it's grassroots, it's starting, and it will continue to grow. But I want to thank Ukraine, and I want to thank Yana and Taras and John for bringing me here. It's been fabulous. Thank you so much. It's been great talking to all of you and meeting some of you. So.
Another thing that I also wanted to say, since Victoria is leaving, we have another English language fellow who is here, Seneca Ryan. So Seneca is in Kyiv. Please use this possibility to talk to the really smart person who knows all the tips about academic writing. I know that you're hosting some you're organizing some events. So do not hesitate to contact her. I'm sure she can help you with arranging some stuff or anything like that. That was what I wanted to finish the presentation with also. And thank you.